Welcome to another episode of Acme's Funniest Person podcast. I'm Bryan Miller, and we're here to talk about a little amateur contest that's been going on for over 30 years and has seen some of the best comics in the country come through. And we're here with one of my favorites, one of the best, one of my favorite people. Cy Amundson is back.
We're here with one of the comimics in the country.
One of the comics. I said best.
Yeah, I know, and I took best out.
Oh,
It's so nice to be here.
You're already tightening my punchlines.
Yeah, thank you. I want to write them tighter and meaner. I'd like them to be tighter and meaner. And yeah, I'm psyched, man. I love the contest. I love the contest. The contest is one of my favorite things in the entire comedy world. It always was.
Did you like host? Because how long you hosted for about a year, 6 months?
I think like 20 years. I was a host for like 20. It felt like it was probably like a month. It felt like 20 years.
Because I feel like you didn't host for all that long.
I didn't. I was lucky. I loved hosting the contest.
Yeah.
I liked being in the contest, but hosting the contest was my favorite thing in the entire world because. And so obviously anybody who listens to this podcast knows how the contest works.
Right, yeah.
But Acme used to be open shows Tuesday through Saturday.
Yeah.
And there would be a contest every single night. And some nights, and I just love the energy of the contestants.
Yeah.
It's just fun to intro a bunch of people in and out. And there were those nights where it would be like one guy in the contest.
Yeah.
Or two people in the contest. I remember David Huntsberger was headlining, and I don't even know if I was hosting or what was happening, but he was like, you should go up on stage. I was doing a character in the green room where I was just talking about how hot it was, which sounds like the worst character in the history of characters. But I was doing it in the green room, and we decided that I should go up on stage. And this is like, no one knows who I am now, but back then, no one knew who I was.
Right.
He's like, you should go do it. You should be in the contest. Go up on stage and be a contestant. And so I went up, and every time I'd start to go into some material, I'd just start talking about the wet. Like, I'd just go into how hot it was. And it was a big full room, and no one liked it except Dave. And you could just hear him cackling in back. It was so great. It's so fun. The contest is just filled with people with like big ambitions, unrealistic dreams, all this energy, and none of the jaded negativity that comes with being deeply rooted and following something like, stand up.
Yeah.
So I love it. I just loved it.
Yeah, I love the difference in expectations among even like one night's worth of contestants. You know, it could be like a little old lady who's like, "I've always wanted to try this one time," and then there'll be some like 22-year-old kid who's like, "So I'm famous tomorrow after this, right?
Yeah.
Like they're gonna let me come back and headline."
Is Letterman's Booker here? Does he sit in the back corner? Where's he at? Dude, my favorite was how wild the swing of material could be.
Oh yeah.
Where you get somebody up and they'd be like, guys, have you ridden a city bus lately? They are packed. And that's the like most edgy thing they say. And then the next guy walks up and he's like, let me talk about the inside of pussies. And you're like, oh no. Yeah. That's always to watch the bang bang of back-to-back contestants. And then the other great thing always was when you would see somebody who was special. When you're like, because here's the thing, and I wish I'd have been around to see Brooks Robinson's
of course.
Contest sets.
Possibly our best episode of the podcast ever. I often get comments on Brooks's episode.
You mean the best contestant in the contest's history?
Yeah. And probably our favorite comic.
Yeah. That makes sense that he'd be the best episode.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish it would have been so fun to see his contest sets.
Yeah.
But even through the years, the people who we now think of as really fantastic. I mean, I remember Trevor Anderson's contest sets where you watched him and you're like, oh, he's unique. He's there's just when somebody new has an energy on stage and they just walk up and it's really cool to watch.
Absolutely. Aiden, the year Aiden won, I'd never really seen Aiden until the contest, and I was judging, and I remember being like, holy smokes, who's this kid? Like he could just this could just be on the show.
Yeah, he could just be a set.
And now he is.
He was a child when I met him. Nate Abshire and I were doing one nighter in Winona. Great one nighter.
Oh, that's right, because he lived there.
Yeah, and he showed up as like, I think he might have been in high school or early in college. Very young kid, and he went and did a guest set, and Nate and I were like, holy shit. Like if I was one of those, those old comics who any new success hurts them.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I was one of those guys, I think I'd have killed Aiden in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Then we're not going to let this fucking guy get to Minneapolis. Let's let him bleed out in a Winona parking lot. We can't have this talent suckling away at what opportunity I have left.
I'm not losing my headline week in 2027 just because this kid's so precocious. So I agree, and the swing of material is always really interesting. More so, I would argue, than you would almost ever even see at a paid show.
Yeah,
because like there's a range at least of styles, but you're not going to see somebody.
Well, it's the some people in the contest. So you have the people who they're going to wind up being comedians, but they've just barely dabbled or never done it before. Mm-hmm. Brooks never been on stage before. Goes up and crushes it, right? Then you have these people who they're comics and they've been comics for a while, but they haven't been paid yet. So it's like, oh, what the game is.
You can tell when they move the mic properly and those little small things.
You know what? But then there's this other group of people who's like, hey, these words have never actually been said out loud in front of anyone other than one of my friends or coworkers. And here we go. And that energy is cool, man. That energy, like first time ever saying an idea, let alone trying to make. So it's pretty wild.
I was like watching people come back through the curtain, like if you're featuring, you just sit back there when they come back, and the look on their eyes were just like, what just happened? Because they were just on stage for the first time ever, and it's like
a deer that's gonna have a drinking problem in 4 years. Like a baby deer. It's the opposite experience to be in the contest, because when you're one of those 4 or 5 people sitting back there, just like, especially if you really, some people I think just want to, it's like a bucket list thing.
Yep.
But if your thing is, I want to, well, and this is different. So, in the history of this fantastic club, I think people have been hired in all different manners.
100%.
Right? But when I was coming up, they hired 1, maybe 2 comics a year, and they were people who almost exclusively back then, the contest winner got hired.
Yes.
So Brooks Robinson wins, gets hired. Yep. Ben Sandell wins my year, gets hired. Eric Allen wins, I think, the following year, gets hired. And so there was kind of, you had to win winning the contest meant in your brain, not that this was accurate, but it meant I got to win the contest and I'll get to work at Acme.
That was to me the prize. That was the $1,000. I would have been nice, but I actually didn't care about the $1,000. I just wanted to get hired here, and I thought that was the best path.
Yeah, and so back then when it was like that, that was a lot more stress if you really wanted to be a comic. And that's back when House of Comedy didn't exist. Sisyphus didn't exist.
Nope. Comedy Corner Underground was just a tiny open mic.
Yep. So there was really not, you wanted to
Knuckleheads had closed too.
Yeah. So, Knuckleheads was gone. There wasn't anything else. I mean, so on top of this being like, this club being top of the A+ list in the country, and their open mic being just a beast that is not comparable to any other show in the country, it's like there's nothing else around. You'd have to drive down to Goonies on Thursdays in Rochester to do stuff. So it was the energy of being on the show and in the contest was way worse for me. I hated that energy.
How long had you been doing comedy when you did the contest?
So I did my first ever set here right around my 21st birthday, like a few days before. So I was 20. And my dad and I, it's funny, Swardson was headlining that week. And so he popped into the mic. And this is pretty early for me. And I didn't even really know, know a ton about Swardson.
Sure.
Obviously, he's still playing the club. He's not where he is now. And so my dad and I drove down. My dad came with me. I did my set, ran the shit out of my light. And to this, so, that for those who aren't familiar with the inner workings, running your light is bad.
Yes, especially when you're new.
When you're new, you run your light, you are probably not going to get back on the list anytime soon.
It's going to be a little while.
And so I run my light. I have a good set, but good is relative. I got laughs, so it wasn't miserable. Some people's first set is like, I bombed harder than anything. I got laughs because it was in front of a great crowd. And then I remember we sat and watched, and Swardson, I got to see him live do the, and it's to this day probably the hardest I've ever laughed in a club, is the "who fucking farted" joke.
Oh, yeah.
There he goes, "Who fucking farted?" Yeah, that joke. Look it up. It's online. It might not be online.
It ultimately was like the title of his special, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's an amazing joke.
Amazing. I laughed so hard. But then my dad and I went back, and so for a couple of times I tried doing it. Like I hung out for a little bit. I tried to do Comedy Corner Underground. I tried to do Grumpy's. That was a brutal experience. And then I just kind of went back to my life for a minute. And so the next year I did the contest, but I had and I think we might not be having this conversation if I hadn't gone away, because I think if I'd have started coming back right after I ran the light like that, I think when I started coming back, I don't even think they really were like, it's him.
A year had passed. There's
a lot of time no one cared or remembered or anything like that.
Whatever your probation would have been was done.
Yeah. And so, and so then I did the contest. So it was probably I'd been doing stand-up for a year, but I'd only done it a small handful of times in between then and when I did the contest.
So almost your first time.
Yeah, first handful of times.
Sure.
My brother-in-law, I have this amazing brother-in-law. His name is John. I lived with my sister and he in the cities, and he's the one who told me about the contest. Oh. I was making all these stupid videos and like sketch videos in his basement, eating his food, sleeping in his rooms. And like, instead of getting a job, I'd be like, hey, your son and I did a reenactment of that scene where they rub each other in Ghost on the pottery wheel. Do you think this is funny? And genuinely, he was this guy who, it was so great. I would be able to, when I started getting going, once I started getting regular time here on Mondays, it was awesome. I would get home from whatever I was doing. He would be getting home from work. And before I went to the club, I would just be like, hey, what do you think of this? And he would just sit and listen. And he's a great laugh. He's a really bright guy. So I would be able to test material on him. And then I'd come down here and do it. And so he's the one who told me about the contest. He was like, when I was doing all this stupid shit, he goes, they have a great club. They have a contest. You should go look at it.
Interesting.
And that's why I did it, yeah.
And then how far did you make it in the contest?
Oh, I think I lost to Ben Sandell 15 times in the contest. Ben and I were on the opening night. We were on our first night together.
Sure.
And Ben crushed and I lost. But then I got the email that I made it to the semifinals. And Ben beat me again in the semifinals, and I didn't get to the finals, and then Ben won the finals. And you'd have thought inside of me that would have made me go, oh, I lost to the guy who won, and that's important. And it didn't. I still hate Ben, and I think I'm so mad at you. But no, Ben is the
nicest guy.
Well, it's not just he's nice. He's the funniest guy.
Some of his jokes are still buried in my mind. In fact, last night, a guy... Were you here when a guy quoted a Ben Sandell joke last night? An audience member was like, what was this joke? And it was, I forget off the top of my head, but he quoted a Ben Sandell joke from top to bottom outside, just talking to some other comics to Nate. And we were like, dude, Ben hasn't even told that joke in like 5 years.
Yeah, where'd that come from? Yeah, man, it was cool to watch him win because he was insanely unique and so funny. And that became such a cool friendship. But I did at the time hate losing, and I had nothing against Ben, but it was, stand-up is very, I'm extremely competitive, and I think I'm a good sport, I think, I don't mind losing, but I love the competition aspect of stand-up. And it's not even with, I mean, it can be. The great thing about the open mic here and the contest and all this stuff is it's not about beating someone, but there is this motivation. Like when you're on Monday night and you're in this long run of like 7 or 8 great young 20-something comics, like you want to go up and you want everybody to walk out of there being like, that was awesome. He would,
We all want at the end of the night, as much as we all like each other's material and everything, we want to be people to, when they walk out to be like, but you were my favorite.
Yeah,
one.
yeah. That's
every single one of them.
And I'll say that to everyone's face. I need to be there. Yeah. No, but but the thing that I really started to love early on was the competition with the audience, because some people just come juiced up, like I'm here to have but some people are like, it's not like they're being intentional. You have make me laugh, but you have to earn it. And that I love it's kind of competitive to me to take a room and they're like, we don't know if you're gonna be for us, and then you get them. I really, really, really dig that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking of comedy in a way is a lot like golf, where like
a lot of fat white guys.
There's that, absolutely, and briefly taken over by Koreans, but that was interesting.
A lot of fat. You watch the way you speak about the owner of this club. You briefly, it's well, let's get away from this golf metaphor.
You're playing. You're really playing. We're not playing against each other. It's a solo endeavor. We're all by ourselves. You're playing against the course, but then ultimately they're going to
shoot the low to score.
They're going to rank us as to how well we played against the course.
Yeah, that's a great metaphor.
So it's impossible, especially when there's a contest or an open mic when there's a bunch of people in a row. Like we all played the exact same course on the same day with the same wind and the same rain or whatever. So like, how'd I rank? Like.
And I feel like how I have done stand-up most of my life is the way the movie Tin Cup ended.
Just hitting balls in the water.
All you got to do is take the drop, make the safe play, lay up. And I was like, what if I did this gator trial joke again? And just over and over and over, just right into a pond.
For the record, not surprised we got a Tin Cup reference from the guy whose dog is named Kevin Costner.
Well, his name's Kevin, but the full name is, The point is, I don't want to talk about Kevin Costner because of the Yellowstone stuff. People are mad. People are mad. And all those people, let's not get into it. There's a certain type of people. I tried to watch Yellowstone, and it's pretty good. It's good TV, and I love Kevin Costner. But you have that moment where you're like, oh, I know who watches this show.
Yeah, it's like Succession for people who think the word succession is an automotive term.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, it's very much like, if you aren't smart enough to like Succession, you might like Yellowstone. If the nuance in upper crust living confuses you, you might be a Yellowstone fan.
So if
your dad, no, I got nothing left.
Did you ponder doing the contest?
If your favorite musician sings in truck commercials a lot. Okay, go ahead.
Did you think about doing the contest again the following year at any point? Like right away after when you lost, you're like, I'm coming back next year, I'm going to win.
No, it was because the rule was you get paid, you're out.
Right.
And I went and I took a shitty little gig at a bowling alley in a town no one's ever fucking heard of, and another shitty ass gig in Fargo. And even though I had done nothing else, I just didn't. And I remember a couple years after I started looking around and being like, are you guys doing the contest? What the fuck is this? Like, I was almost angry. I was like, I could have done it for 3 more years.
Yeah.
But at that point, you only have the ability to go off of what people have told you and what people are saying. And the idea was like, hey, don't fucking lie.
Oh, that would have been the worst case scenario. What I don't want to do is piss off, like the whole goal is to get hired. Yeah. You don't want to start off the hiring process by lying to people.
Exactly.
And no, I once, as soon as I lost my year, I was like, nope, I'm going to get paid now. And we're just not going to, I decided that pretty early. Cause what I didn't want to do was like turn down gigs till like March and then change my mind. So I just went like, we're waiting or we're not. Nope, not going to wait.
Yeah, you got to jump.
But you were also getting a ton of time at the mic. at that point? Or shortly after that?
No, so here's the thing. I don't remember. It wasn't shortly after.
Oh, really?
Well, so I can't remember when it happened. John Richards, who was the manager here at the time, and that was back when if you didn't work here, you didn't get on the mic unless you were a 3-minuter. Yeah. Nobody got time. It was really, really tight. And so if you ever it's so tight that if you ever got bumped from a 3-minute to a 5-minute, they're like, oh no, that's the path. They put you're at 3 and then they put you on 5 and then they put you on 7 and then they audition you. And that was kind of what Brooks and a lot of those guys had gone through.
Yeah.
And so I remember one day I walked in and I was on the 5. And so I, shit my pants for a little bit, did the set, had a good set. John said something nice to me after the set. And then after that, I was on every week. But then I remember it was a lot of those guys, Ben and Brooks, they were on it for a while and then they got hired. And I was on it for the mic list for, 200 years, I think, I was on it for a while. And
literally like 2 years, right?
It was, at least, I think. And it was because eventually, John moved on and got another job, and then Derek came in, and then eventually Derek was the one who hired Andy Erickson and I at the same time. And during that process, you're young and you really want to do something. It was so infuriating. Like you're like, I'm ready, hire me.
Yeah.
And then there'd be like your favorite comics would come through town and you'd see it like 3 months out and you're like, well, maybe that's the week. It never was. But I think that was the best thing that ever happened to me, was being forced to sit on this mic list and write and work and write and work and never get a chance to, because by the time I finally got the chance, had a little bit more material and was a little bit more motivated, and it just kind of translated, it was a great thing. It was a really great thing that I didn't.
A lot of those things, a lot of those delays earlier in your career seem so frustrating, or like they're going to be like bad for your career. You find out, oh, that was hugely
literally
helpful.
The best thing. Same thing with the Comedy Central half hour is, not getting that forever and being frustrated and thinking you deserve it, and then realizing the year you get it, had you done it any other year and been at any other point, you wouldn't have had this material, and you're a different sort of comic, and just being same thing, just being like thankful that delay. That's well said.
Yeah, and so speaking of, so then you and of course you went on and got hired at Acme. You've done the Comedy Central half hour. You were on Conan, and then you were on ESPN for a skosh there.
That was that's a great place for comedy.
Famous comedy.
What
hub.
I've always said is the people with the best senses of humor on the planet are people who are hardcore. In favor of a group of humans who play a sport. They always they love jokes. That was a really good experience, but it was different. It was going from like walking into a room and everybody wants you to be funny to being on camera and 50% of people are like, hey, you fucking asshole. How dare you say that about the Bruins? You're like, I don't even know anything about the Bruins. It was just a mean, funny thing to say. Yeah. So you're trash. You're a trash person.
The golden era Sports Center, right? Like the Olbermann, Patrick days, those guys, the internet was like so non-functional at that point that they were probably like blissfully shielded from that.
Oh,
they could just get to be as weird as they want to be, and I don't know, I guess people are watching, who knows, that must have been nice when sports fans couldn't like reach through the TV at you.
We're like, hey, we can talk to anyone anytime we want. We're in a place in society where if you think a thing about a person, no matter how much you don't know that person, there's a chance, like you can throw a comment on something they do and there's a chance they're gonna see it.
Oh yeah,
you have a real chance to heckle anyone that you can think of almost. That's a wild...
like the president possibly. Literally that high.
Yeah.
The last one, he might have read him, he was checking.
Might?
Yeah. I mean, one time I made a joke, I didn't even tag him, I made a joke about Ricky Gervais, and Ricky Gervais attacked me on Twitter, and I'm just thinking you have $500 million. Like how can you care about what I think?
Yeah, that's probably how you get $500 million.
I guess. Yeah, that's probably a good point.
That's how you wind up with $500
But then you were out of comedy for a bit when your health took a tough turn and you couldn't travel and get on stage.
Yeah.
How long were you off? How long was the break between stand up for you?
So when it first started happening was it was a few years of really reduced. I could do stuff here in town, but I wasn't going. And then I started getting a little better. But then when I started getting a little better, I went right to ESPN. And ESPN was a get on a plane Monday morning, fly to Bristol, Connecticut, do shows for them, come home Thursday. And it's not the easiest thing in the world to jump right back into then going and traveling. And my soon-to-be wife had just moved to Minnesota from California, and I couldn't just like leave her there weeks on end.
Yeah.
So it was pretty reduced. And then in 2019, stuff got so bad. Like 18 is probably the last time I'd done a real road week. And then in 20, the last time I'd gotten on stage was this stage with Chad and I doing a live podcast. And then I didn't get on pandemic and health-wise.
Right.
The pandemic kind of hid my health issues. It was interesting. As stressful as that was, no one else could do anything either.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
And so
it's almost like you weren't missing out on as much because everyone was missing out. Now you just focus on your health.
Yeah. And so then I got on stage again for the first time this past year. And have been doing it a little bit for about, the last 4 months.
Yeah, and you're headlining tonight.
And I'm headlining tonight. This. We're gonna headline tonight and see how that. We did the mic last night, which was really fun.
How does it feel to be back?
It's weird. My first time on a comedy club stage was Go Bananas in Cincinnati, and it was Chad. I opened for him, and it was so incredible. Because of the autoimmune stuff, I hadn't been in a lot of packed rooms.
Sure.
And so just the sensory overload of hearing that many people audibly react was crazy. But I remember driving home after that first night in Cincinnati and getting to the house and just being like, I had a pretty good weep, I had a pretty good cry, but it was like a little bit of both. It was like, oh, I'm so happy to be doing this again, and I missed it so much. And then also it was kind of a little bit of grieving, because I think in that moment I realized it was funny. The whole time I wasn't doing it, I just thought about wanting to do it and being able to be a part of it. And then when I finally did it again, I realized, I'm never going to be able to do it like I always envisioned doing it. It's always going to be some compromised version of it because of the health stuff. And so it's both wonderful and amazing and really fun. And then at times, really frustrating. And, I don't know that's sad, but there's some grief to it, but it's great. I think all those are fine, emotions to have it, Now I'm spiraling. I don't know where to end this thought. But Brandon, cut it, Brandon. I don't know where to end the thought.
But no, I think what'll be interesting is I think your material has changed, because you used to be such a physical guy on stage, and you remember the time you almost killed me with that chair? You physically threw a chair backstage, and I was standing back there waiting to host, and this chair crashed back. And then later, when the show got over, I'm like, hey, just warn me if you're gonna physically overarm throw a chair.
Listen to me. To be clear. Something happened in the material where I had to throw a chair, and it went by Brian. I wasn't aiming at Brian.
No, you couldn't see me. I was behind the curtain, but you didn't know I was standing quite close to
Brandon, another way to say this is maybe the fucking host shouldn't stand right by the curtain. It's a dangerous place. Neither of us can see on the other side. I remember Derek Hinkles, who grew up in the same town as I did when he got hired here. I remember he had to host the open mic for a while, and one of the nights I came up on stage and did the Lion King thing.
Yep, I remember that.
And lifted a grown man up and held him for the audience to see him. And I can't do that anymore.
Sure.
So,
but your style has evolved, I think. So in a weird way, I think when one muscle sort of weakens, another one strengthens to to compensate for it.
You mean my chair throwing muscle?
Your chair throwing muscle, a little on the weaker
Atrophied.
side, but so I think it's made your timing much more considered and much more sort of nuanced.
Yeah, when I did Monday night, the first album I did, I would, I'm not a big regret guy, but I would be happy to go back and do all that same material in a lower energy.
Sure.
Early on, it was just like, they're giving me energy. I'm trying to force it. Like, laugh at me. Come on, please. I want it. And then Monday night was like kind of starting to figure out that you don't have to do that. And so I think that path was already coming. But yeah, with the health stuff came some speaking issues, like in terms of projecting my voice, which is funny because I think if anybody wanted to poke at me back in the day, it was like, yeah, you're funny, but it's only because you shout at everybody. That's like your thing. Like I could go up and shout about anything and everybody was just tricking people. So now I can't shout really. I can get a little loud, but so I think it's a lot of that. It's almost, I can't use my voice in the same way. So you're right. It forces you to follow a different sort of rhythm for sure.
Well, real quick before we go, any advice to future contestants or people considering doing the contest?
No way, man. Here's what I'll say. Don't take any advice from anybody.
That's great. That's great advice.
Yeah, if you're going to do the contest, come down and watch.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Come down and watch. If you're going to do the contest, come down and watch Monday night where everybody's practicing. Mm-hmm. That's what you have to see. You have to see young people practicing. Mm-hmm. And then come down and watch somebody else's contest so you actually know how it works.
That's no one said that. That's a really great point.
Well, you wouldn't walk out on, somebody's like, we're playing a game today. Meet me out on the field. And you're like, what field? And they're like, it's the field. Mm-hmm. And then you walk out on the field and there's like, you want to know your environment and the structure in which you're existing. So do that. And then don't take anyone's advice until you've been doing stand-up so long that the comics who are your friends would be your friends if you worked at a grocery store or a deli with them. And then if you want, take their advice. Everything else is all the advice is rooted in everybody's version of themselves and their view of the world and all of our insecurities. Just go do it and talk about how hot it is. People love that.
Well, great. Well, hey, thanks for stopping by and
yes, sir.
Looking forward to the headline set tonight.